I knew I couldn't let her win the day. Not after everything she had done. Not after all the lies she wrapped around our lives like silk. Everyone in the church thought she was perfect. The smiling wife, the doting mother, the graceful stepmother who saved us after my mother died. But what they didn't know was that under her perfect mask lay a secret so rotten, so dangerous, that it could destroy her reputation forever. And I was the only one who knew it. I remember standing at the mirror that morning, dressed in my pale blue bridesmaid gown, my hair pinned neatly, the sunlight spilling in through the lace curtains. My hands trembled as I held the necklace my mother had given me years ago, the one piece of her I still kept close. My stepmother, Nadia, was the maid of honor at this wedding, her sister's big day. And she was glowing, floating around the house like a queen, barking orders at everyone while flashing her perfect smile. "You look lovely, Sarah," she said sweetly as she passed me in the hallway, her perfume filling the air. "Try not to look too nervous up there. All eyes should be on the bride, not you." Her tone was gentle, but the edge in her voice was unmistakable. That was how she always operated, tiny cuts, invisible to everyone else, but deep enough to scar me. I smiled back faintly, keeping my voice steady. "Don't worry. I wouldn't dream of stealing attention from you." She blinked, her smile faltering for just a second, as if she wondered whether I meant it as a compliment or a jab. Then she swept away, her heels clicking on the hardwood floor. That's when the fire inside me flared. Because I wasn't just nervous that day. I wasn't just worried about standing on stage in front of hundreds of people. No, I was waiting. Waiting for the moment when her carefully constructed world would come crashing down. It had all started months earlier. I was in the attic, digging for an old photo album of my mother. Nadia hated when I went up there. She claimed it was full of dust and mold, but I always felt it was because she didn't want me digging into the past.
My past.
My mother's life. That day, I found something I wasn't meant to see. A box tucked beneath old quilts, tied shut with string. Inside were letters, photographs, and documents, all with one thing in common: Nadia's name. Only, it wasn't the name I knew. The photographs were older, faded, showing her with a different man, in a different city. The letters hinted at a marriage, a child, debts left unpaid. And the documents? Oh, the documents spoke of fraud, of lies, of an identity quietly shed when she left that life behind. I remember sitting there, dust covering my dress, my hands shaking as I pieced it together. Nadia had a past she had buried, a husband no one knew about, a son she had abandoned, and debts that, if exposed, would destroy her carefully built image of perfection. I should have run straight to my father, told him everything. But I knew how that would go. He loved her. He believed in her. If I brought him only fragments, only half the truth, she would twist it, call me jealous, claim I was making things up. So I kept quiet. I kept quiet, and I watched her. I smiled when she smiled. I nodded when she spoke. I let her believe I was still the obedient, grateful stepdaughter she had molded. But inside, I was storing every piece of evidence like a weapon. And then, when I learned her sister's wedding was coming, the idea hit me like lightning. What better place to tear the mask away than on the day she wanted to shine the brightest? What better stage to expose her than in front of family, friends, neighbors, everyone whose approval she craved? So that morning, as I slipped on my shoes and smoothed my gown, I wasn't just preparing for a wedding. I was preparing for a war. The hours before the ceremony passed like a dream. Guests filled the house, laughter echoing through the hallways, champagne glasses clinking. Nadia floated among them, greeting relatives with practiced charm, complimenting dresses, making herself the center of every conversation. Her children trailed behind her like shadows, smiling politely, their eyes sharp and watchful like hers. I sat quietly in the corner of the bridal suite, pretending to adjust my dress, but really studying her every move. How she leaned close to whisper in the bride's ear, how she laughed at jokes that weren't funny, how she placed her hand on my father's arm with a possessive grip. My father. He was the reason I had to be careful. He adored her. He saw her as the woman who had saved him after my mother died, the one who had kept the family together. If I exposed her recklessly, without proof, he would turn on me. I had to wait until the moment was perfect. That's why I had slipped the documents into my clutch that morning. Copies of the letters, the photographs, the records of debts. Enough to show everyone exactly who Nadia really was. As the ceremony began, I walked down the aisle with the other bridesmaids, my heart pounding. The church smelled of roses and polished wood, sunlight streaming through the stained glass windows. I forced myself to smile, to look calm, to play my part. But my eyes kept flicking to Nadia. She stood tall at the altar, her gown shimmering, her expression serene. No one else could see the monster beneath, but I could. As the vows were exchanged, I thought of the letters I had read in the attic. Letters from Nadia's first husband, begging her not to leave. Letters she never answered. Letters that proved she had walked away from a family once before, erasing them like they never existed. And now she had done it again, with me, with my father, with all of us. By the time the reception began, my resolve was steel. I watched her laugh and dance, watched her bask in the admiration of the crowd. And I knew the moment was coming. When the band paused for speeches, the bride's father stood, thanking guests for attending. Then he passed the microphone to Nadia, who smiled like a queen about to deliver a decree. "Family," she began, her voice smooth and warm. "It means everything. We wouldn't be here today without love, without sacrifice, without those who lift us up when life is hard." Her words dripped with irony. I wanted to laugh, but I didn't. Not yet. I waited until she was done, until the applause faded, until the microphone was passed to the floor for anyone who wished to speak. That's when I stood. My legs shook as I walked forward, clutching my purse like a lifeline. The room went quiet. Dozens of eyes turned toward me. My father's confused, Nadia's narrowing with suspicion. I took the microphone, my voice steady despite the storm in my chest. "Family," I said softly, echoing her words. "It means honesty. It means truth. But sometimes, the people we trust most are the ones who hide the darkest secrets." A ripple of unease passed through the crowd. Nadia's smile froze, her eyes locked on me like daggers. I reached into my purse, fingers brushing the documents. My heart hammered. This was it. "But I continued, my voice rising, today is the perfect day for honesty. Don't you?" Gasps filled the room. Nadia stepped forward, her voice sharp. "Sarah, that's enough." But I wasn't finished. Not even close. The silence in the reception hall was suffocating. Dozens of faces stared at me, waiting, uncertain. I could feel my father's eyes on me, searching, worried, but it was Nadia's gaze that pinned me in place. Her smile had hardened into a mask, stretched too tightly, like porcelain about to crack. "Sarah," she said again, this time louder, sharper. "This isn't the time. Sit down." Her voice carried authority, the kind that made people obey, without question. For years, I had obeyed. For years, I had swallowed her words, pretended they didn't sting, pretended I didn't see through her. But not tonight. I tightened my grip on the microphone. "Actually," I said evenly, "I think this is the perfect time. After all, weddings are about truth, about starting fresh. Don't you agree?" The crowd murmured, unease spreading like wildfire. Nadia laughed, a brittle sound. "She's nervous. Pay no attention. Weddings can overwhelm young girls." I pulled the first document from my purse, unfolding it with trembling fingers. "Then maybe you'd like to explain this." Gasps echoed as I held it up for the crowd to see. A faded marriage certificate, Nadia's name printed clearly alongside another man's. "You see," I said, my voice steady now, "my stepmother has been lying to all of you. She wasn't always the perfect wife and mother she pretends to be. She was married before. She had a family before. A family she abandoned." Nadia's face drained of color. For the first time, she faltered. "That's enough," she snapped, her composure cracking. "That's private, Sarah. You don't know what you're talking about." But I did. I pulled another paper from my purse. Letters. Dozens of them. From her first husband. Begging her not to leave. Begging her to come home to their son. Letters she ignored. The crowd erupted. Shocked whispers rippled across the room, relatives craning their necks, neighbors gasping. My father stood frozen, his mouth opening and closing like he couldn't form words. Sarah? Nadia's voice was sharp now, venomous. She stepped toward me, her heels clicking against the polished floor. Put that away. This is slander.
Lies.
She's making this up to embarrass me. I met her gaze, unflinching. Then explained the photographs. From my purse, I pulled a small stack of photos. Faded, worn, but unmistakable. Nadia with a man I didn't recognize, holding a baby in her arms. Smiling. A family portrait. The room fell silent again. Even the band had stopped, their instruments hanging limp in their hands. I held up the photo, my voice calm but cutting. This is you, isn't it? Her eyes flicked to the picture, just for a second, before she plastered the smile back on her face. That was a long time ago, she said, her voice trembling now. It doesn't matter anymore. It's in the past. But it does matter, I shot back. Because while you were pretending to be this perfect, selfless stepmother, you were hiding the fact that you once walked away from your own child. And you lied to my father, to everyone here about who you really are. The murmurs grew louder, angrier. Guests exchanged shocked glances. The bride stared, wide-eyed, her mouth covered with her hand. My father finally spoke, his voice rough. Nadia, is this true? She turned to him, her eyes wide, desperate now. Daniel, listen to me. I had no choice. It was complicated. He wasn't good to me. I had to leave. I had to start over. Her excuses spilled out, frantic, but no one was listening anymore. The cracks in her mask were too wide. The truth was spilling through. I reached into my purse one last time, pulling out the final piece of evidence. The debt records. Unpaid loans, credit reports, all under her old name. Proof that she hadn't just abandoned her family. She had abandoned everything. She didn't just walk away from a husband and son, I said, my voice ringing through the hall. She walked away from responsibility.
From debts.
From everything that didn't serve her image. And then she built a new life here, pretending she was perfect. Pretending she was the victim. But she's not. She's a liar. The room exploded. Gasps, shouts, accusations. Relatives stood, demanding answers. The bride's father looked furious, the groom's family whispering in disbelief. My father sank into his chair, his head in his hands. Nadia tried to shout over them, her voice shrill. She's lying. She's jealous. She's always been jealous of me. But no one believed her anymore. The proof was too strong, the image too broken. And then, in the chaos, her son's name slipped from her lips. You don't understand, she cried. I left to protect him. To protect my son. The room went silent again. The word hung in the air like smoke. Son. Gasps filled the hall. Guests exchanged shocked looks. My father lifted his head, staring at her in disbelief. You have a son? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Nadia froze, realizing her mistake too late. Her face went pale, her eyes darting wildly. I didn't mean. But the damage was done. The whispers swelled, louder, angrier. She had denied everything, called me a liar, claimed I was jealous. And now, with one slip, she had proven me right. I stood there, the microphone still in my hand, my heart pounding in my chest. I hadn't expected her to break so quickly. I hadn't expected her to confess, even by accident. But she had. And now, the whole room knew the truth. Nadia's mask had finally shattered. The word hung in the air like thunder, echoing off the walls of the reception hall.
Son.
For a moment, the room was frozen. I could hear the faint hum of the lights, the rustle of silk dresses, the sharp intake of breath from the guests. Every pair of eyes was on Nadia, and for the first time since I'd known her, she had no mask to hide behind. You have a son? My father whispered again, his voice hoarse, breaking through the silence. Nadia's face twisted, her painted smile gone. Her lips parted, but no words came. She looked cornered, like a fox trapped with nowhere left to run. Finally, she stammered, Daniel, I can explain. But my father slammed his hand down on the table, his chair scraping back. Explain? You've lied to me for years. You've lied to all of us. You had a son, a family, and you never thought I deserved to know? The crowd erupted. Relatives muttered furiously. Guests shook their heads in disbelief. Some even stormed out. The bride's mother gasped, her hands trembling as she clutched her pearls. The groom's side looked scandalized, whispering rapidly among themselves. The bride herself, Nadia's own sister, stood frozen, her bouquet slipping from her hands, petals scattering across the floor. "Nadia," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Is it true?" Nadia's eyes darted wildly, her composure unraveling. "I only wanted to protect him. He's not important anymore. This life, this family, this is what matters." Her words made the air grow colder. People recoiled as though her desperation carried a stench. Protect him? Not important anymore? The crowd murmured louder, the disgust in their voices undeniable. I stood silently, the microphone still in my hand, watching her crumble. For years, she had told me I should be grateful to live under her roof, that I owed her everything. For years, she had made me feel small, insignificant. But now, in front of everyone, it was her turn to feel powerless. "You don't protect family by erasing them," I said softly, my voice carrying through the silence. "You don't build a life on lies. You destroy everything when you do." Nadia spun toward me, her eyes blazing. "You don't understand anything, Sarah. You're just a jealous little girl who can't stand that your father loves me." But the words fell flat. No one believed her anymore. The cracks were too wide. The evidence was undeniable, and her own slip had sealed her fate. My father's face was ashen, his shoulders slumped under the weight of betrayal. He looked at her like he didn't even recognize her anymore. "Nadia," he said quietly, "get out." Her eyes widened, panic flooding her features.
"Daniel, no, please.
"Don't listen to her. I did everything for you, for us."
Get out."
His voice was final, steel-edged with heartbreak. For a moment, she stood frozen, her chest heaving, her eyes darting around the room as though searching for someone to defend her. But no one did.
Her own family looked away.
The guests avoided her gaze. She was alone. With a choked sob, she ripped off her corsage and threw it onto the floor. Her heels clicked furiously against the tile as she stormed out, her children trailing behind her in shame. The heavy doors slammed shut, and just like that, she was gone. The room was still buzzing, guests murmuring, the bride's big day forever tainted by Nadia's lies. But I didn't care about the whispers, the stares. All I cared about was the weight lifting from my chest. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. My father turned to me then, his eyes wet, his face crumpling. "Sarah," his voice broke. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" I swallowed hard, my throat tight. "Because you wouldn't have believed me. You never did." His face twisted with guilt. He stepped forward, pulling me into his arms, holding me tighter than he ever had. "I'm sorry," he whispered into my hair. "I'm so sorry I didn't see it. I should have protected you. I should have listened." For a long moment, I let myself sink into his embrace, feeling the years of silence and hurt crack and fall away. For the first time since my mother died, I felt like I had him back. Around us, the reception stumbled back into motion. The bride tried to salvage the evening, guests whispered about the scandal, but none of it mattered to me. Nadia was gone. Her lies were shattered, and the truth was finally mine. The days that followed were heavy with fallout. Word spread quickly about Nadia's abandoned family, her debts, her lies. She tried to call my father, to explain, to twist the story back into her favor. But he never answered. He never let her back in. Instead, he turned to me. He asked questions, listened, really listened, for the first time in years. I showed him the letters, the photographs, the records. I told him everything I had discovered in the attic. And when I was done, he sat in silence, tears sliding down his cheeks. "She was never who I thought she was," he murmured. "But you were right all along." It didn't erase the years of pain, the times he chose her over me, the nights I cried alone. But it was a start, a step toward healing. Weeks later, I found myself back in the attic, the sunlight slanting through the window, dust motes swirling in the air. I opened the box again, the letters, the photos, the fragments of her lies. But this time, I didn't feel fear. I didn't feel powerless. I felt strong. Because I had taken her mask and torn it apart in front of everyone. Because I had shown the world that the perfect stepmother was nothing more than a fraud. Because I had finally defended myself and my mother's memory against years of cruelty. And as I tucked the box away, I realized something. Revenge doesn't always come in fire and fury. Sometimes, it comes in silence, in patience, in waiting for the moment when the truth can no longer be denied. That was the moment I chose. And it was worth every second. Now, when I walk through the house, I don't hear Nadia's voice echoing in the halls. I hear my mother's laughter again, faint but steady, like the walls remember her. I feel safe. I feel free. And I know deep down that I won. Because in the end, Nadia didn't just lose the wedding day. She lost everything.